Hey, this is Dan from Motorsports Lifestyle. Today's Fab Tech Friday is going to be all about welding aluminum. Stay tuned. So welding aluminum. I'm going to go through a couple steps that I like to take to make sure the aluminum is clean, which is the most important part with welding aluminum. So if you're following along at home, what you're going to need is some aluminum. You're going to need a welding helmet, some gloves, some acetone, and a wire brush. So first things first, obviously this is just a how-to, so I'm just going to use some scrap aluminum. I'm going to cut this off, and I'll cut this into little strips so I can do a couple T-joints and a lap joint. One cool thing about aluminum, a lot of people don't know, is you can actually cut aluminum with a circular saw with a wooden blade. Aluminum's a softer metal, so the bigger offset with the teeth actually cuts through aluminum pretty well. So we're going to start out by cutting this. We're going to cut it down. Then we're going to sand the edges to get rid of like saw marks like this. And then we're going to clean it with acetone, get rid of the top oxide layer. And then from there we're going to go into welding. So working from a vise, I'm now going to take a flap wheel. I'm going to sand off these saw marks and get rid of any burrs on the aluminum. And then after that, we'll start cleaning the pieces. So now that we have the saw marks sanded out, our next step is going to be taking acetone to wipe down the aluminum. When aluminum sits, it gets an oxide layer on it, even if it sits for a minute or two. So what you want to do is clean it with acetone pretty much as soon as possible before welding begins. Anywhere between 5 to 10 minutes before is more than sufficient. Most important with acetone is you want to wear gloves when operating with it. The biggest thing is acetone can actually seep into your organs, so it's best to be safe. And the gloves also double as keeping your oily fingers off of the material you're going to be welding. So what I like to do is just take a rag, fold it up a couple times, and take my container, shake some out a little bit, get it on the rag, and then I begin wiping down the aluminum. And I want to wipe it down everywhere, just like that. And I'll do that with all my pieces. Let's get that oxide layer off. And then even after I finish my pieces, I'll even take the filler wire I'm using. Just kind of take the rag like this, wrap it around, and go back and forth. They say squeaky clean. You might not be able to hear it on the camera, but there is a point where they actually start squeaking. That's when you know you got them clean. Let's talk a little bit about welder setup. I have a newer inverter style machine in which you can actually run sharpened tungsten when welding aluminum. If you have an older transformer style machine, let's say a Miller Synchrowave, somewhere along those lines, they recommend you use a balled up pure tungsten. But the newer machines get really good weld quality with a sharpened 2% tungsten actually. So let's talk a little bit about my settings. So with the Everlast machine, your machine may be a little different, but it'll be similar. I want to make sure my machine is set to AC. AC is for aluminum. Now once again, I have that newer inverter style machine. So I have my AC balance not set so much on the cleaning side of things, whereas the older transformer style machines, you might want to run like a 50-50 mix balance. I'm running at 40, and I'm running my hertz at around 150. And what the hertz is how fast it switches back and forth from DC positive to DC negative. Everything else, just my post-flow, pre-flow, that's all the same that you would have for steel. You turn up your post-flow more for how hot you're welding. And as a bonus, at the end of the video, I'll go over pulsing a little bit. Usually when I weld aluminum for a part, I'll actually pulse most of the time because it helps keep the part cool and gets a good weld consistency. You want your torch angle and tungsten angle to be kind of at a 90-degree angle from each other. That's what I find to be best. and you want your torch to be about a 20-degree tilt this way. You're going to move this way. Now the most important thing I find with aluminum that a lot of people mistake is they don't let the puddle wet out before they start adding wire or moving. And when that happens, what you'll get is you'll get the wire to start to ball up before it enters the puddle, or you'll just get a dirty weld, because the way that the AC welding works is it has to clean the metal before it does the penetration work. So if you don't sit there and let it wet in and get a nice, the puddle will get a nice sheen to it. That's when you know you're ready to start adding wire and moving. That's the biggest thing I see people that have issues with welding aluminum, is they treat it like steel and they just light up and start moving right away, and you can't do that. So what I'm going to do first is I'm obviously going to tack this lap joint together, and then I'm actually going to light up on one of those tacks, and I'm going to sit there until I see that tack wet in and get a glossy sheen to it. At that point I know I can start moving along, and I'm going to dab my wire in. Same as with steel. I'm just going to keep it nice and consistent, keep my arc focused where I need it to be, keep the cleaning action going, and from there we'll come back and you can see the arc shots right now. Hopefully this video has been informational for you with welding aluminum. Any other questions you might have, leave a comment below and I'll be sure to answer them. And for any future videos you might like to see for Fat Tech Fridays, leave a comment below. Don't forget to subscribe.